I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Bonnie, can we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Cerucci? Here. Mr. Gottman?
Here.
Dr. Kalverstein?
Here.
Mr. Lapsevich?
Here.
Mr. McIntyre?
Here.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Here.
Mr. Ritter?
Here.
Mrs. Warning? Here. Mr. Williams?
Here. Comments from residents on agenda items. Anybody wish to speak to us on agenda items only?
Mr. Stubenborg called in advance.
Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Very good, thank you, Scotty. Chad Stubenborg, 510 California Avenue. I wanted to discuss really two agenda items. The first being the RFP that is under board resolutions to actually look at a realtor to potentially move forward, or a broker of record to move forward with the sale of the junior high if that's the board's desire, and really discuss how the last one came to be. Also, I know under the list of bills, there's a $2,500 bill due to the 360 group this week. So the first question I had actually was for you, Mr. Dice, from a legality standpoint. So on April 18th, in executive session, about 10 minutes before the board meeting, we all received this letter. Everyone that was on the board, I'm sure, is very familiar with. Two-page letter from the 360 group. Arthur McAlley, broker of record, signed it. Talks about two simple terms. The terms being $2,500 monthly retainer and a 1% transaction fee upon the sale or lease of the building. Steve, actually, you made a motion and actually suppressed any conversation about the motion, as you called it, to vote with this document, correct?
Go on.
Is that accurate? Okay. So my question is how a month later an agreement was signed, which is a 12-page document signed over a month later that has terms that the board never voted upon. So I was just wondering for you, Mr. Geis, if the contract would be null and void, being that the contract was never voted on, was never listed as an exhibit. I think that they should be listed as the broker of record as the motion was carried by Mr. O'Donnell, but the only two stipulations at that one time were the $2,500 and the 1%. So there's no marriage clause as of if you were to get rid of them, that you would have to stay married to them for the length of the contract.
That's it, right? You got the question out.
What's that?
You got the question out, right?
Yes, that is in there.
Okay, as you know, this has been discussed back and forth with the board now for a couple months. And I know there's been some assertions that there was never any contract between the parties. Others said that there was a contract. And depending on if there was no contract, well then naturally there would be a question as to whether or not what was signed, or whether or not the board ever approved that contract. And if that was the case, then it would be possibly voidable. I went back and Bonnie pulled the minutes from the meeting, and here they are. And I'm going to pass out a copy to everybody. I think this pretty much says it all. It goes on for 3 pages. Starts out a resolution presented by board members. In it, it discusses the approval of the 360 group as the facilitator and the individual that will be representing you. It quotes fees. It indicates that the fee that they're quoting is a 1% and a $2,500, which is consistent with the writing that we get later. I would suggest to you the vote was, it appears it was attempted to be tabled, you'll see that. The vote was 5-4. And the vote passed, the motion carried. I think this document, when I looked at it today, and I saw it for the first time today, really says exactly what you have as far as an understanding with the 360 group. We recognize, and again, it gives the terms, $2,500 a month, retainer, plus necessary expenses and materials, retainer to be paid monthly, and the 1% transaction fee, which I would suggest to you is a fee that's relatively low for the sale or lease value on all portions of the property. When I heard that there was some question, I wanted to see what we actually voted on. And it appears to me that you voted and approved the contract. I don't know that there's any question anymore. When you look at the language that's in here and the vote that's taken, I don't know how you can dispute that. But I thought it was important to give it to you so you could see it.
And I couldn't agree more with you, Mr. Dykes. The question I have though is, there's an additional clause in the actual contract, which was not brought up by Steve O'Donnell, not in the executive material that we're given 10 minutes before the
What
meeting.
was that?
That is, the transaction fee of 1% of gross sales or total lease value shall be paid to the contractor if a sale or lease for any portion or all of the property is executed during the agreement period, and if the contractor's efforts result in the sale or lease within 12 months following the termination of this agreement. So even if you were to terminate the agreement, they would still be paid in a 12-month timeframe.
Okay,
and that was
well,
never brought up.
as far as I'm concerned, the document that you voted on says the retainer to be paid monthly and the 1% transaction fee upon the sale or lease value of all portions of the property. You might be right about adding more terms to it, but this is what you agreed to. And if they become the procuring cause and they bring a buyer, a reasonable buyer to you, I think you're gonna owe them that fee. This isn't rocket science. It says what it says right in the minutes, and you guys all voted on it.
Yeah, and again, that was, I don't think there's any question as to whether or not they passed the appropriate.
What you're saying, I think we could dispute the fact that we'd have to pay them a fee if they didn't do their job, or if they were terminated for some reason. But I think that this document says if they procure the seller, or the buyer, you owe them the fee.
Okay, very good. And then the last question I had for you, Steve, 'cause I'm not sure if you ever answered while I was still on the board. Did you have any personal dealings or any dealings with the 360 group or with Art prior to this? I know you had pushed for him pretty.
Yeah, probably 10, 15 years ago, while I was managing partner of an investment corporation, we had dealings with C.B. Richard Ellis. At that time, Art McCully was a commercial broker with C.B. Richard Ellis. We did maybe 3 or 4 deals together. And since then, we haven't had any, actually almost no contact. So 10 years ago.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I saw. He donated your campaign, according to the campaign finance report. That's why I found it. I know it's not illegal, but ethically I was questioning it as to why you pushed it, you actually called it to vote, and now you're attacking someone who wants to bring in other vendors and see which one is the best one. So I'm just here tonight just to implore that the board move forward with the RFP to look at what groups are actually out there. I think this was obviously brought upon the board last minute. There are a lot of new board members out here. Just like you've looked at other things prior boards have done, tonight we'll be voting on the fee structures of the junior high events. I implore you guys to do the same with this. So, well, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Anybody else wish to address the board at this time on agenda items? Seeing none, moving on. Section A, minutes of previously held meetings. Need a motion to,
So moved.
Second.
moved by Mr. O'Donnell, second by Mr. McIntyre. Bonnie, can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Gottman,
Aye.
Dr. Kalkstein,
Aye.
Mr. Lapsevich,
Aye.
Mr. McIntyre,
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell,
Aye.
Mr. Ritter,
Yes, with exception to the, I think it's the Buildings and Grounds meeting minutes. I abstain on that.
Right, please. Mrs. Warning,
Aye. Aye.
Mr. Williams,
Aye.
Mrs. Cerucci.
Aye.
Okay, we're gonna bounce around a little bit, we have a couple school board members who wish to leave.
I'm sorry, it was the Policy Committee minutes of 1/30/2018. Policy Committee minutes, 1/30/2018. Thank you.
We're gonna bounce to section F, administrative resolutions. Short.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Item number 1, I'm going to refer to Dr. Rossi, if you could take the science textbooks.
Final approval of the science textbooks. We want to approve the following science textbooks that were placed on 30-day public display beginning January 25th, 2018. We have 5 textbooks listed there for the designated courses.
Item number 2, Dr. Chaky.
One overnight excursion, PMEA Western Region Orchestra Festival,
And item number 3.
and 3 facility agreements as listed.
Mr. Schott, you have a number of them.
Thank you, Dr. Short. Item number 4, approve the 18-19 fiscal year Allegheny Intermediate Unit 3's program services budget. Total program service budget for 18-19 is $2,086,109, reflects an overall increase of $52,105 or 2.56% in overall expenditures. Total district allocation by state subsidy withholding for 18-19 for all school districts is $1,765,288, reflecting a decrease of $69,910 from the 17-18 budget. The district share of the allocation by state subsidy withholding for 18-19 will be determined by the Pennsylvania Department of Education according to the district's aid ratio and weighted average daily membership. The district share currently estimated for 18-19 is $70,024 as depicted in Exhibit A. Item number 5 is the approval of the IDEA Part B Use of Funds Subgrant Agreement with the Allegheny Intermediate Unit Number 3 for the 18-19 fiscal year, as depicted below and also as depicted in Exhibit B. Item number 6 is the approval of Attachment A, which is the notice of adoption of policies, procedures, and use of funds by school district of the Allegheny Intermediate Unit Number 3, IDEA Part B, for the 18-19 fiscal year, as depicted below and also as depicted in Exhibit C. Next item is the approval of the Educational Services Agreement with the Allegheny Intermediate Unit Number 3 for the purchase of special education services as applicable during the 18-19 fiscal year as depicted in Exhibit D. Item number 8 is to approve the extension and continuation of the preventive maintenance service agreement with Train US, Inc. for the chiller, HVAC, and the building automated system or the computerized controls located at the high school and at the Ramsey Elementary School for a 3-year period as depicted in Exhibit E. Item number 9 is to approve the extension and continuation of the service agreement with CM Eichenlob Company for the required telescopic bleacher safety inspection services in the sports complex, the Gateway High School, the Gateway Middle School, and the Mosside Middle School gymnasiums for the total amounts as depicted in Exhibit F. Item number 10, approve addendum number 1 for the continuation of the curtailment services agreement with Energy Curtailment Specialist and Compiero Energy LLC, DBA Clear Choice Energy, previously dated December 6, 2012, and NRG Curtailment Solutions, Inc., for electricity demand response program services for the enrollment period of June 1st, 2018 through May 31st, 2019. We are the Power Play Program Addendum Number 1 as depicted in Exhibit G. The next item is the acceptance of district donation received during the current 17-18 fiscal year. Donation from Bruce E. Dyson Associates in the amount of $2,013.75. That represents a donation for the remaining 50% of the student meals paid during the state football championship game. And the final item, item number 12, is an approval replacement of Valerie Warning as a replacement signatory/delegate to serve as district's representative on the Tri-Cog Land Bank as part of Land Bank School District Advisory Committee in accordance with the requirements and responsibilities as outlined in the Intergovernmental Cooperation Agreement created and organizing the Tri-Cog Land Bank.
Questions or comments on Section F?
Yeah, Mr. Shaw, I tuned out about halfway through. Can you repeat that for me?
I used to read these all word for word.
I think we talked
Yes.
about it 2 weeks ago. There you go.
Any other questions or comments, Section F? Seeing none, Bonnie, can we have a roll call, please?
Dr. Kalkstein.
Aye.
Mr. Lapsevich.
Aye.
Mr. McIntyre.
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mrs. Warning.
Aye.
Mr. Williams.
Aye.
Mrs. Cerrucci.
Aye.
Mr. Gottman.
I think I need a motion.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion. I was just trying to replay that. I make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Ritter, second by Mr. O'Donnell. We
Continue.
have questions, comments? Roll call.
Again, we did it already.
Yeah, we'll Make
We
it
didn't finish it.
official.
Go ahead.
Gotta make it official.
Dr.
Just say all
Kalkstein.
those in favor.
Mr. Lapsevich.
Aye.
Mr. McIntyre.
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell. Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mrs. Warning.
Aye.
Mr. Williams.
Aye.
Mrs. Cerucci.
Aye.
Mr. Gottman.
Aye.
Motion carries. Moving on to section F.
That was
Where's-
it.
G, resolution presented by board members.
Can you take these individually?
Yeah.
All right,
You're up first, Rick.
yeah, I see that. Request for proposal, RFP, marketing, selling, real estate firms, and brokers. The Gateway Board of Directors asks for the business manager to advertise an RFP, request for proposal, as it relates to marketing and selling of Gateway Middle School property. The board is aware that a group has previously been approved at the April 18th, 2017 regular board meeting. However, for the sake of transparency, the board believes an RFP would allow for all interested companies to submit a proposal for the board to review.
Got your motion?
Yes.
Or a second?
I'd like to second it.
For the purposes of discussion.
Motion by Mr. McIntyre, second by Mr. Ritter. Questions or comments on,
Yeah, isn't it true we don't need this anymore now that we've established that we have?
Yeah, I mean, we beat this pretty hard.
All right, so,
I say yes. I mean, I think that document, your minutes evidence a
Clearly states,
contract
yeah.
that has terms maybe different than what was signed off on, but whatever you did in the minutes is what you agreed to.
so Rick, going back to the reason that you're bringing this forward is you're trying to make every effort that we give everyone an opportunity to do their level best to bring the best services that they can to the Gateway School District, and the board has an opportunity to pick the best candidate for that service, right?
Correct.
And so-
And again, when this motion was, or this resolution was originally put on the agenda, the
There was a question.
the legality of the contract was still very gray and very vague.
Okay.
If we're now being advised by a solicitor that it is, basically, it's a valid contract, it does put this RFP request into murky waters.
That's what I'm saying.
And I understand that, and at one point I had withdrawn this. I decided to put it back on the agenda tonight so we could at least have a public and open discussion
Right.
on
Exactly.
why the RFP would be on the agenda, not be on the agenda. And I believe I still have the ability to withdraw this at this point.
And I think, does anybody, you've had the chance now for a few minutes to read the minutes. Do you see the elements of the contract in there? I mean, I don't think there's any question.
Mr. Dice, it doesn't really relate to the RFP so much, but with the contract, the wording that and we've discussed this before, is when do we start paying the retainer?
Well, in this document, it seems you start immediately.
It says, where is it at?
Yeah, there was that.
The term of this agreement will begin on the date of the anticipated rezoning classification.
That's what the written contract says, not this
Correct.
document, not your minutes. It says in the minutes, $2,500 a month retainer plus necessary expenses and materials. Retainer to be paid monthly. Okay, it's arguable that you owe from April 18th thereon.
The actual contract says from the date of,
I agree, but this is
so
what
do we
you
go by the
agreed-
minutes or do we go by the contract?
Well, I'm suggesting to you that you don't want to necessarily go by these minutes for purposes of that provision, because that would mean you'd have to start paying them last April. But it's arguable, they could make the argument that you do owe it from then. I don't think they are. I don't think they're making that
The same
argument.
as his other deal.
So they
You
could
follow what I'm
send us,
saying?
they could send us
I
a
do
bill
understand.
daily, monthly, semi-annually, or annually. They put the language in, they want to be
Monthly.
paid
Both
every
on
month.
On the contract and in the minutes, it's agreed on that it's $2,500 monthly.
Right.
Okay, but I just, in the contract,
But
it's,
because in the minutes, it doesn't talk about when it begins to be paid, it's arguable that when you approved it, next month, they would have been due $2,500 in June.
So there's a legitimate question.
Yeah, I mean, that's their argument. I don't think they intend to make that argument.
Right.
I think that they've already indicated that they believe that the first time that they were entitled to anything is when they sent you an invoice and it's due to be paid tonight.
okay, thank you.
So I think that they've acted in good faith, and I would be happy if you would withdraw it, and if you would, I would withdraw the second.
Right, yeah, I don't think there's any chance of it getting a vote. Again, now that we don't appear to have any wiggle room with the contract, I have no problem, well, I have some issues with withdrawing it.
Well, let's do it
but-
this way. There's a motion and a second, right?
Right.
Why don't you make a motion to table it? And then it's off the table indefinitely.
I'll just go ahead, I'm just gonna withdraw.
Okay.
If that's
Why don't we-
okay.
why don't we
But
just-
I do wanna say one thing on it. Moving forward, I'm gonna look to the rest of my fellow board mates to look at some policies and some actions we can take to prevent something like this happening again, where make it ironclad that there will not be a contract that's signed that doesn't come before the board. You know what I mean? It seems like that happens every once in a while, and I think it's something that needs to be snuffed out.
And in that same spirit, I withdraw my second.
Thank you, Mr. Ritter.
Okay, motion by Mr. McIntyre to withdraw, second by Mr. Ritter. Bonnie, can we have a roll call?
Do we have an
You don't
opportunity
need,
to
you
talk?
don't need to vote. I mean,
Just
there's
withdrew the
no,
motion.
Pardon?
There's a motion to withdraw, a second by Mr. Ritter. Now there's a discussion.
Questions,
So-
comments?
So is it withdrawn permanently, or do we need to take a vote on an issue like this? So my point is simple. We've been beating this horse for a long, long time. We have a quality organization working for us. They've done fine work. They have only begun to invoice us. I think there's 2 invoices in there. So they're obviously ethical and honest folks. They were with us as recently as yesterday with Rick, you and I. So I just want to put this dog to bed one way or the other, and I would suggest a vote. If this board considers your motion favorably, then it does. If it doesn't, then it's over and it's over.
It's withdrawn.
But my question is, withdrawn permanently, or is it just gonna come back up next month, or what? I don't wanna go through this over and over and over again.
any motion can be reinstituted by anybody at any time. But yeah,
That's why I'm not.
we're not gonna do it.
See, Mr. O'Donnell, that's why I didn't table it, I withdrew it. Tabling it means it could come back.
Okay.
Withdrawn, obviously, yeah, I could come back at the next meeting and do it again, but I've beat my head against enough walls.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Bonnie, can we have a roll call?
What are we voting on?
To
To
withdraw.
withdraw. Yes.
Do we need to actually vote on that?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
you had a motion and a
to
second.
withdraw it.
okay, that's fine.
Mr. Lapsevich,
This is to withdraw it.
Yeah, I want to withdraw it, yeah.
Mr. McIntyre,
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell, Mr. Ritter,
Aye?
Mrs. Warning,
Aye.
Mr. Williams,
Aye.
Mrs. Cerucci,
Aye.
Mr. Gottman,
Aye.
Dr. Kalkstein.
Motion carries. Resolution number 2.
Yes, this is to rescind the approved, previously approved fee schedule for the event, is that there will no longer be fees charged at Gateway Middle School and none at the high school for non-athletic performances. The new fee schedule will be for the Gateway High School athletic events only. Adult tickets will be $6 and student tickets will be $3. And,
You want a motion on that?
I was gonna do,
Can we do one at a time? Because I do have,
Okay, so
This is the,
I'll move
Just-
item 2.
correct.
that's the
Second.
rescission.
That's
of the
rescission.
fees.
So you're making a
I'll
motion,
second.
Steve?
Yes.
Motion by Mr. O'Donnell, second by Cerucci.
yeah, because I do have a question. It came up in other conversations that, are we able, and this might be a question for Mr. Dice, are we able to request any donations at the door in lieu of fees and earmark those for instruments or, different things that the music department might be wanting if we're not collecting a fee? Is there any,
Well, I think you could do all of those things, but boy, you're creating a little bit of a nightmare from an administrative standpoint. I don't know how you'd administer to that. Who would be collecting the money? How would you make sure that it goes to that particular fund? The concept is a noble one, but I don't know that it's being able to be accomplished that easy. You'd need to have people there saying, look, this money's gonna be earmarked, making sure it gets to our treasurer, Mr. Schott, saying this is earmarked money. But you could do it.
you can do it, it's just maybe difficult to organize and
Oversight.
track.
I have a question.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I have a question. Is this your recommendation?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
I discussed it with our athletic director, and this is.
right, okay.
I have a question, just, and this isn't being argumentative, but, and I support this, but would this be possibly considered looking at decisions that previous boards made and undoing them?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Correct.
I just wanted to clarify that, thank you.
Correct.
Any other questions or comments?
Yes, I have a question. Was this, why was this not recorded in the minutes of the meeting on January 30th, 2018? The minutes just state that there's an agenda and that there would be a board resolution regarding ticket prices and extracurricular activities, but there's no record
There
of,
was a record, Bonnie, it was a resolution by a board member prior.
For the fees, that was August 26, 2015.
January 30th, 2018.
No, August 2015.
Bonnie's talking about when they put it into a place. You're talking about when they started the process of rescission.
Right.
From the last meeting.
Was there,
minutes.
Right,
was
so-
there a resolution presented?
Yeah, so some numbers
To
appear
resolve.
here, $3 and $2, and I'm wondering where those numbers were discussed. Obviously, someone discussed those numbers, and now they appear on a page here, but they don't appear in the minutes. See, I'm just trying to trace
That was
it
at the
back.
policy committee meeting they did, that was one of the agenda topics.
Right, but no one took minutes on,
No, we just state that the meeting took place, and those were the agenda items discussed.
see, that's the part I am a little frustrated with. I like to see what was talked about, who came to the meeting, what the arguments were on one side or the other. It's a big burden on the minute taker, but it provides a record as to, how people that weren't at the meeting, such as me,
Okay.
would know whether to vote this up or down. So it would be helpful for me if the minutes were fuller and richer.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, can we have a roll call vote?
Mr. McIntyre,
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell,
Aye.
Mr. Ritter,
Aye.
Mrs. Warning,
Aye.
Mr. Williams,
Aye.
Mrs. Cerucci,
Aye.
Mr. Gottman,
Aye.
Dr. Kalkstein,
Aye.
Mr. Lapsevich.
Aye.
Motion carries. Motion number 3.
4. Number 4?
3.
Three's next.
We're doing those
Didn't I already
individually.
say that about?
We just
6
performed
and
number
3?
2, and now we need to perform number 3.
I thought I read that one, okay. New fee schedule for the Gateway High School athletic events will be, adult tickets will be $6, student tickets will be $3. This is for the high school only.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Mr. O'Donnell, second by Mr. Ritter. Questions or comments on this resolution?
What were they before for those who
It
are
was $6
watching?
straight at the gate. They could buy student tickets at the school. For those that didn't buy student tickets at the school, they were charged the adult prices. I contacted the surrounding schools, and this is what general consensus is, so we're gonna do that.
And the idea is to get more student activity, more student involvement, more students coming again.
Correct.
Okay.
And students aren't rich. So,
Any other questions or comments? Bonnie, can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. O'Donnell,
Yes.
Mr. Ritter,
Aye.
Mrs. Warning,
Yes.
Mr. Williams,
Aye.
Mrs. Cerucci,
Aye.
Mr. Gottman,
Aye.
Dr. Kalkstein,
Aye.
Mr. Lapsevich, Mr. McIntyre.
Aye.
Motion carries. Motion number 4.
Yes, approval to advertise the sale of old equipment and various other miscellaneous items that are no longer serviceable for the district. Approval to advertise the sale of old equipment, including but not limited to technology and various other miscellaneous items are no longer serviceable for the district via the formal advertisement in the Post-Gazette, Greensburg Tribune Review, and on a district website. The above formal advertising process to be utilized by the district is the same advertising process required to be utilized by the district per the school code for requesting formal bid solicitations, which require the advertisements in 2 newspapers of general circulation once a week for 3 consecutive weeks.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. O'Donnell, second by Mr. McIntyre. Questions or comments?
Yeah, I wish there was a
Resolution number
better way to focus, this advertisement than to put it in the Greensburg Tribune Review, but it says clearly that it needs to be advertised in 2 newspapers. We used to have 2 or 3 newspapers in Pittsburgh, but We just don't anymore, so this is
We're
the
just
best we
abiding
can
by
do.
the legal requirements.
I know, right.
Could we put Myco in like a flatbed and just have him drive around the neighborhood?
Any other questions or comments?
He is laughing at that.
Bonnie, can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mrs. Warning.
Aye.
Mr. Williams.
Aye.
Mrs. Cerucci.
Aye.
Mr. Gottman.
Aye.
Dr. Kalkstein.
Aye.
Mr. Lapsevich.
Aye.
Mr. McIntyre.
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Motion carries.
I'm going to excuse ourselves to go up to Baldwin Whitehall for the boys, girls basketball semifinals. Thank you.
Okay.
We jump to
Section B, Mr. Schott.
Mr. Williams, Section B, resolved that the Gateway Board of School Directors approve Section B1 listed bills, B2 monthly financial statements, and B3 budget transfers as listed in Section B at the Wednesday, February 28th, 2018 regular board meeting.
Questions or comments?
Do you want a motion?
Very good.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. O'Donnell,
second.
second by Mr. Gottman. Questions or comments on Section B? Seeing that, can we have a roll call vote, please, Bonnie?
One moment. Mr. Williams.
Aye.
Mrs. Cerucci.
Aye.
Mr. Gottman.
Aye.
Dr. Kalkstein.
Aye.
Mr. Lapsevich left. Mr. McIntyre.
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Motion carries. Section C, items previously tabled. We
Nothing.
don't have any. Section D, personnel agenda. Ms. Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Resolved that the Gateway Board of School Directors accepts and approves the personnel agenda items 1 through 6 as listed in Section D for the regular voting meeting on Wednesday, February 28th, 2018. Under resignations, we do have one additional name listed since the agenda setting meeting. We also want to congratulate again Kathy Ladd for her 16 years of dedicated service to the district. Under leaves of absences, we have 2 additional leaves that were added since the agenda meeting. They're notated by the asterisks. Transfers, 12, that's per the collective bargaining agreement. 6 were added since the last time, and that's the trickle-down effect from one bidding opening up another through there. Under employment, approve the employment of the following. We have 1 substitute custodian listed. Supplemental contracts, 1 resignation. Supplemental issuance, we do have 1 additional assistant JV softball coach that was added since the agenda meeting. And under C, we have all the items listed from the agenda meeting. 6 for volunteers, there were no changes.
Mr. President, do you want a motion starting with number 1 through 5?
We usually do a motion for the whole thing.
Yeah. Is that what you want? Okay, so moved.
John seconds?
Motion by Mr. O'Donnell, second by Mr. Ritter. Questions or comments on Section D?
I got one question. Between resignation and the issuance in section 5 for the track coach, are the 2 taken over for the one that's resigning?
Yes,
Okay,
they took the position and they split it.
okay. That's all I got.
Any other questions or comments on Section D? Seeing none, can we have a roll call vote?
Mr. Williams.
Aye.
Mrs. Cerucci.
Aye.
Mr. Gottman.
Abstain?
Dr. Kalkstein.
Aye.
Mr. McIntyre.
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Excuse me, Brian, are you abstaining from the entire Section
Oh.
D
You can
or just?
abstain from one section.
Right.
Section,
Section
From 5B.
5,
5, okay,
and yes for the rest.
okay. We'll go with that, thank you.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Section E, conferences and conventions. Second that.
Resolved that the Board of School Directors approves and authorizes the following conferences and conventions as listed in section E.
Can I interrupt just for 1 second? Did we do number 5 on that, my motion?
Yes.
Yes.
Fine, we did?
Yes,
Okay,
the
I'm sorry.
entire
Okay. I'm sorry.
There's a little asterisk sometimes it's added when you listen. I think Mr. Gottman has a question.
Well,
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was looking at this, on section 5, part C. Unless I missed something, I didn't see, on the last agendas online with the cheerleading coaches. Is that,
If you remember when we had the agenda session, the cheerleading coaches were on there, Ms. Warning asked that we be tabled.
yeah,
She has reinstated for this one that was added on today.
oh, I would have changed my voting. I didn't see that.
Right, you can still change your vote.
I can, really? I can?
America.
But there is a caveat, only one time during your 4-year term.
Well,
Choose wisely.
Well,
So
I
then
have
on
a comment.
section
If we're going to
C-
reopen this, we had comments for the audience on agenda items, and I was kind of expecting some of you in the audience to speak on these agenda items, and you kind of missed your window. Was that a mistake? And can we open up opportunity for these ladies to speak on an agenda
Well, they
item?
certainly can talk about it under non-agenda items.
Well, I think it pertains to something that we're voting on, so
Okay.
I would like to
That's
hear
the
what
case,
they
then
have to
yes,
say
okay.
before we vote.
All right.
Is that acceptable, Mr. President?
Acceptable with me.
Help me, what do we do when we're going back on?
We're going to
Say, so
revote?
are we rescinding the motion or just for 5?
Brian caused all the trouble.
I'm sorry.
I make a motion to rescind the votes on section 5, supplemental contracts, pending comments from the audience who missed their window to speak on agenda
On the
items.
issuance.
On the supplemental contract issuance, section C,
Okay.
John seconds.
Under personnel.
under personnel.
We have a roll call vote on that, please?
One moment, please.
If you agree with me to rescind that, and give the people in the audience a
Give them a chance to.
motion, a minute to
Okay.
respond.
Mrs. Cerucci.
Aye.
Mr. Gottman.
Aye.
Dr. Kalkstein.
Aye.
Mr. McIntyre.
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter. Aye. Mr. Williams.
Aye.
Motion carries.
We're
Motion
just all
carries.
over the place now.
Now we'll open it up to comments.
Now we're back to section 4. Mr. President, comments from the audience on agenda items.
Yeah, do we want to let them?
Personnel, under issuance, anybody wish to address the board? I guess cheerleading? Please state your name and address, just for the record, please.
Kimberly Ruger, 775 12th Street, Pitcairn.
Thank you.
I am also the president of GCBC, which is Gateway Cheerleading Booster Club. This year by far has been our worst experience with a head coach that I've ever had in the 6 years that I've dealt with cheerleading. From her lack of communication, not coming to any board meetings, not returning. I have one email since last March from her where the JV coach, I have probably 19 or 20. I also have emails that were forwarded from him to our secretary that were sent out. So we're not having any type of communication with her at all. I've addressed it to Mr. Ravesti. I've also gone to the principal, and I just feel like we keep getting dismissed. She's not communicating with anybody, even the cheerleaders. We had Pitt Cheer Day. She was asked to talk to the varsity cheerleaders. My daughter is a varsity cheerleader. There was never a comment made about doing Pitt Cheer Day to any of our cheerleaders. But she was telling the other coach that they weren't getting back to her. We finally went to the cheerleaders. They said there was never an issue. There was never a topic. So, it's not just the communication. I mean, there's been issues all school year, from recognition night She was supposed to get a hold of Pick Karen. I forwarded the information. There was never any communication by her. We had to step in a couple days before recognition night and do the work for her. So I do know that the JV coach did 95% of the work this whole entire year. He came to almost all of our board meetings. If he didn't come, he gave us an agenda to speak up. So my concern is that she's getting paid to do a job that she's not doing. And like I said, in the 6 years that I've been doing this, never once have I had an issue that I felt that I had to come and do something like this for. So it's really disheartening to have cheerleaders say they don't want to come back next year if she's the coach. And especially for us parents that paid $1,200 our first year for our girls to coach, and then $700 to $900 every year after that. So it's frustrating to sit there every meeting and have her not even show up. And she has an agenda, a coach's agenda, on our list every single month that we have a meeting. So I just wanted to put that out there. I've sent emails. I've talked to and forwarded some emails to Val. We didn't think that this was on the agenda today, but we were coming to discuss changes to tryouts, and I was gonna mention this also. So again, I appreciate your time, and I just hope that you guys will look into it before you guys approve her for another year. Or at least have somebody discuss with her that she has to communicate with parents and the cheerleaders. It made us look so bad to not have all of varsity going to Pitt Cheer Day because she never even mentioned it once. So their frustration is building and building. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name's Mindy Mason. I currently reside at 1242 Northwestern Drive, Monroeville, Pennsylvania. I too am here this evening. Again, I apologize that we were not able to get it on the agenda. This is our first time ever having to do anything like this. From now on, we promise we will keep updated on that, we promise. But I am here as well to back up other moms on the GCBC committee. We all have girls in the program, and this year has been an absolute disaster from March last year up until now, and tryouts haven't even gotten started yet. Already on the agenda is to change the tryout regulations, which is down the line going to limit girls from being able to further participate on the squad or even participate at all. I find this to be a huge, huge issue, especially when there are so many people who come from such diverse socioeconomic demographics within this school system. I would also like to point out that I wish that you would definitely put it on the table, keep it on the table until everyone's been heard or this has been dealt with about the coach getting another contract out of this. Like Kim said, she was not at our meetings the whole year, and I attended all the meetings on purpose, not just for points, so that I could make sure that my daughter, gets things on the squad, but because I like to be there and I like to know what's exactly going on. She was never there. She was there for 3 meetings. At one point during this school year, right before the Heinz Field playoff game, it was a big, huge rift started between the JV and the varsity squads. This got started as the varsity coach had told her varsity girls that it was up to them if JV got to cheer at the Heinz football game. She was not authorized to say that at all. That in turn sent the varsity girls to start a petition with the student body and take it to the principal. I had my JV daughter texting me, crying on the phone, wanting me to come and get her because it had become so intense between the JV and the varsity cheerleaders. I am a former cheerleader. I'm sorry to take up so much.
No, can you clarify the petition? They started a petition to keep the JV from going? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, they did. And you can actually speak with Mr. Murphy about that. He is aware of that, and I'm sure that he can bring that information as well. I forgot where I was at. I'm so sorry. As a former cheerleader, I was a competitive cheerleader before. I've never been on a squad or see any squad operate with a coach that is just not into communicating with the parents, is not into making her team a team, it seems like she had separated the JV from the varsity when in prior years, as I've been on GCBC, these squads always acted as one team, and that is how it should be. I just feel that a coach who is absent in a lot of her meetings with us, has no desire to communicate with us whatsoever, should definitely not hold a position with this school district. I think she's gonna cause more strife for the girls ahead of time, or ahead in the future. And that's all I have to say. I just finished an email to all of you today. I apologize. It takes me 3 hours to construct emails. I will have that sent out to you this evening. I hope you will all be able to enjoy it.
We have
Not
a
enjoy it,
3
read
hour
through
email
it.
coming.
No, it just took me 3 hours. This took me 3 hours to construct it because I wanted everything to be perfect and I wanted to make all my points. So hopefully you will all be able to read that email this evening and then make an educated decision after that.
Thank you.
And Mindy, you could encourage other cheer parents to contact the board as well with their comments.
I have encouraged through emails to just let other parents know that if you do have any issues or any problems, that now would be your time to contact members of the board, Randy Ravesti, Val Warning especially, and let them know, let all of you know what exactly has been going on for this past year. I know that in the past, last year, when we had an issue right off the bat with this new coach, it was like our issue fell on deaf ears, and a lot of the mothers became discouraged. A lot of cheerleaders are planning on not coming back. A lot of cheerleaders even quit. So I don't like to see that happen to a program that I am so proud of, and so I just love it. From the time that my daughter has, joined the Gateway Cheerleaders, it's been a phenomenal thing for us. So, okay, my time's up. Thank you all so very much.
If I could just quickly address it seems to be a running theme between, some of you folks. As far as the head coach not being present at the booster meetings, is that what we're talking about?
Yes.
I'm not sure what the expectations are or what they were in the past. Just from my experience, I've been associated with like football boosters and basketball, volleyball boosters. And I can speak from my experience with the Women Hills. I'd be very surprised to learn that George Novak attended more than 3 booster meetings in his entire career. So it might be what the expectation was.
Right. Can I just add to that point, though, that you made? This isn't football. In fact, according to federal court, the Second U.S. Circuit Court, this is not a sport at all. This does not constitute a sport under Title IX, and so that may be true for the football coaches. Maybe
I'm not saying that you shouldn't expect them to be there. If that's something that you expect and you work out with the coach, I get that. What I'm trying to maybe express is that's not an uncommon thing.
Correct.
With any booster organization and a head coach.
Can I just say that in the 6
Could
years?
you go to the mic so the person at home can hear you, please? Thank you.
In the 6 years that I've been a part of GCBC, the head coaches have always come to the meetings. They may miss 1 or 2, but there's always a coach's report for them to keep us updated, let us know what's going on, and just share with all the parents that don't get to be a part of it that often. So there's always that coach's report, and we haven't had one since last June.
Okay,
So-
that's admirable of them for them to do
Right,
that.
and we've had coaches that have been such great role models that, like my daughter, who has graduated 2 years now, is still in contact with her, still goes for her advice. And this coach, like she said, put a wedge between JV and varsity, seniors and juniors, and the board and herself.
Okay.
So, again, it's an issue this year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am, before you sit down, you indicated that it had been raised last year. Was it
Yes,
raised?
last
I don't
year.
recall it being raised to this board. Am I wrong?
Well, I actually did send an email to not only Randy Ravesti, who I was speaking with over the phone as well, but
Right.
I also sent an email to Val Warren as well. At that time, she actually sent me to speak with Kelly Perry, who was the junior high cheerleading coach.
Okay.
Apparently, in the past, she has been the varsity cheerleading coach, and she thought that she might be able to lead me to the answers that I was looking for, but unfortunately that wasn't.
Okay, but it hadn't been
So I
brought to this-
apologize for mentioning anything.
No,
have not been brought to this board, though, right?
No, not at
Okay,
that time.
that was my
My
question.
16-year-old daughter actually had asked me after that time to let it drop,
Okay,
and, you know, because I only had 3 moms
yeah, okay.
affected with me.
Thank
So,
you.
Thank you again, sorry.
So to go on a little bit with the
Anybody else wish to address us?
My name's Jill Watson. I live at 314 Pembina Court in Monroeville. And I wanted to address the issues of cheerleading too. I wanted to speak specifically about the significant changes that have been proposed to the tryout format for this year. And many of these are coming from the varsity coach, is my understanding. The biggest change probably is that current freshmen, next year sophomores, will be eligible to be on the varsity squad. That is a very big change. Given the numbers of freshmen, sophomore, and juniors currently on the squad, that'd be 29 girls vying for the 16 minimum spots on the varsity squad. That's gonna leave a lot of disappointed girls, unfortunately. That under these circumstances, sophomores could bump seniors off the squad. These girls, through the years, and their families have made a significant commitment to the cheerleading squad in their time, their energy, and finances, a significant financial commitment. There's also a proposal to reduce the JV squad from 24 girls to 20. At this point in time, we're reducing the number of girls that are able to participate when there is really an increased interest in cheerleading, which is kind of exciting that for a while their numbers were down. They're back up. I think we should be encouraging participation rather than limiting participation. Basically, part of the concern about the tryout format too is there's a large number of the points for tryouts are derived from tumbling. Given the cutoffs, and if I did the math right, if you can tumble, you walk in with a 13% advantage over a child who cannot tumble. As I'm seeing at the events, tumbling is not used extensively. One thing that is used extensively is stunting, where they hold the girls up and do the pyramids and things like that, and that is not at all a part of the tryout format. Even though that is done extensively and that is taught and practiced. Tumbling is not taught at all through the cheerleading program. You need to walk through the door knowing how to tumble. And I don't think that we should value the skills that are taught or in the program less than, I got myself confused here. I think we should value the skills that the girls are taught within the program more highly than they are being valued, rather than the skills they walk in the door with. If it's important that a girl tumble, she should be taught to tumble then, and that's not done. There was some talk about quality versus quantity, and all the girls involved, they're quality individuals, they're quality cheerleaders. They deserve the opportunity to participate.
Thank you, Jill.
Anybody else at this time wish to address the board?
All right, Scotty, I would like to make a motion that we table the hiring of the head coach from Section C pending further investigation and discussion of the concerns of the parents, and to give ones that may not be here a chance to respond also.
Was this tabled previously?
Yeah, but she put it back on.
Did we vote on table?
It was just removed from the agenda.
It wasn't tabled.
It's a study session, so we didn't.
It was just
vote on
a
it.
study
It's
session.
already-
Okay, that's okay.
Is this, your motion, do you want the cheerleading coaches or just one coach?
I think it's just the head coach that they are questioning.
I was agree with both, 'cause I think
Do we need, typically I would do all of them, because the head coach sometimes
I
then
think
appoints
we
the
should
coaches
table it until
below.
the chair of the athletic committee is available
Okay.
to actually discuss this in public.
That's all cheerleading? All
Correct.
four? Okay.
Is that going to cause a problem to not have any coach for a month for the cheerleading squad?
Tryouts, I believe, are March 20, 19th.
March 19th to the 21st for tryouts.
Yes.
Yeah, it could be a factor.
Could be that,
That's
because our
the
meeting
problem.
isn't until the third Tuesday.
We do not have the coaches judging.
Oh, okay. All right. Fair enough.
Second.
I know my
Somebody-
cheerleading.
You do? Starters cheer. 3 girls he knows.
Teach you a few things.
A plethora of information in there about cheerleading.
Okay, we have the motion read back.
I need a second.
Second.
Somebody needs a second.
What's the motion first?
Motion is to table the hiring of the cheerleading staff pending further investigation and discussion on the accusations brought forth by the parents.
John
Get it?
seconds.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Rucci, second by Mr. Ritter. Questions or comments?
There is
Yes.
no motion.
Yeah.
You just go to roll.
Roll call.
Mr. Gottman.
Aye.
Dr. Kalkstein.
Aye.
Mr. McIntyre.
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell.
No.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Williams.
Aye.
Mrs. Cerucci.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Now we need, I make a motion to approve the rest since we rescinded the vote on
Second.
Section 5
Section
supplemental.
5, Section C.
What's your I'll wait till you get a second.
Motion is to approve
Approve the rest.
Everything but
the
the
remainder
cheerleader.
of the supplementals other than the cheerleading.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Is there a second?
Yes, I second.
Yes, Rick.
Moved by Mr. Rucci, second by Ms. McIntyre. Questions or comments on the rest of the section? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Dr. Kalkstein.
Aye.
Mr. Oh, I'm sorry, George is not here. Mr. McIntyre.
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell. Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Williams.
Aye.
Mrs. Cerucci.
Aye.
Mr. Gottman.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Moving on.
Where are
Yeah,
we?
where are we?
We are at
Right?
Section
Section
E
E.
with Dr. Chaky.
Conferences and conventions.
You could, please read your conference and convention report again, sir.
Resolved that the Gateway Board of School Directors approves and authorizes the following conferences and conventions as listed in Section 8.
Your motion?
So moved.
Just making sure nothing's added.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Mr. McIntyre, seconded by Mr. Rucci. Questions or comments on Section E, conferences and conventions? Seeing none, can we have a roll call vote, please, Barney?
Mr. McIntyre.
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Williams.
Aye.
Mrs. Cerucci.
Aye.
Mr. Gottman.
Aye.
Dr. Kalkstein.
Motion carries.
That's it.
Comments from residents on any non-agenda items. Do we have anybody who wishes to address the board at this time? Non-agenda items. Please come up and state your name and address for the record, please.
Reverend Dr. Scott Gallagher. I don't know if I should give you the church address or my home address. I don't know where I reside the most.
Where do you lay your head?
700 Greenleaf Drive. I'm here on behalf of the Monroeville Interfaith Ministerium and our esteemed colleague and Interfaith President, Rabbi Barbara Simons, who's unable to be here tonight. Yeah, we wish to read this into the record for this evening. Sadly, the students that walk the hallways of our schools today have no memory of a time when school shootings were separated by decades. Instead, over the past 19 years, more than the entire life of our seniors, there have been 200 plus shootings. This is the reality of our children. We, the Monroeville Interfaith Ministerium, religious leaders of many faiths, realize that there are differences in our faiths, our polity, and opinion. However, all of our faiths call us to love, honor, protect, and respect our children. This is our shared reality. We acknowledge the complexity of this issue surrounding school shootings. We acknowledge that even in the midst of the body of the ministerium, that there exist differences of opinion. and this is the reality of our community. We also celebrate that we live in a society where all, regardless of age, have freedom of speech, freedom of press, the right to peacefully assemble, and the right for petitioning for a governmental redress of grievances. Therefore, members of the Monroeville Interfaith Ministerium support the youth of Gateway School District and the youth around the nation who are applying their education by employing their freedoms, who are demanding a safe and secure environment for their education, who are memorializing the deaths of fellow students, teachers, and coaches across the nation, who are honoring the work of first responders, and who are holding us as adults and community leaders and society as a whole to account. Further, we applaud the work of the Gateway School District, teachers, coaches, administrators, support staff, the security, and the school board. We want to thank you for providing our students with an education through which they are aware of how democracy works, the freedoms we enjoy, and how to apply those freedoms to circumstances that directly affect them. We thank you for proactively employing ways in which you felt were best to keep our students safe. We thank you for providing the space in which our children can learn, excel, and express themselves in a way that gives us hope for the future, pride in this generation, and the privilege to work with such inspiring children. We thank you and hope that you can appreciate the work that you have done and support these children who you have greatly influenced and educated. Ms. Hall.
Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend.
Is Tammy Akins here? Anybody else wish to address the board at this time?
Hi, my name is Mrs. Audrey Forrest. I reside at 1162 Colgate Drive. I have 3 boys in Gateway High School right now and a granddaughter in Gateway Middle School. My question for the board today is, in light of the shootings last 2 weeks ago in Florida, what the district's plans are to protect our children as far as metal detectors and such as that. I'm very happy that we have the police in the schools. The officers are wonderful. My boys tell me all the time that, that they talk to them and they get to know them and they feel very comfortable with the police officers that are there. I would just be very encouraging towards an extra step of protection for our children, and I wanted to find out what those plans were.
I could say we have policies and procedures in place, and we wish not to share any of the detailed information with the public.
She's asking about metal detectors specifically, I think.
Right.
I can let you know that we are constantly assessing our security and crisis management within the district. It is something that has been talked about in the past. We have not decided to move forward with that aspect. However, given the situation that has occurred recently, we will have further conversation about that moving forward.
Mr. Rucci, I know with the safety committee, that's certainly something I was planning on actually bringing up at the next committee meeting. So it's something that's going to be discussed and it's going to be looked at.
But I think it's important to understand that whether we do or do not have the capacity to check students using some sort of electronic metal detectors, we're not going to disclose that. Okay? For the simple reason that we don't want someone whose intentions are bad to know what it is we can or cannot do. But I think, as the President said and the Chair of the Safety Committee, we have substantial policies and practices in place to protect our children, and we constantly review those.
Thank you.
I went to the spring legal roundup yesterday offered by the PSBA, and this is one of the topics that came up, that is the use of metal detectors. The gist of the latest arguments are a metal detecting unit is very difficult to put in place and to staff. It makes a line for the children. Children can find a way to get something through. In other words, if you have a something made of metal that could hurt somebody, you could just as easily make it out of a different material, like wood or plastic or something, and hurt somebody. So metal detecting by itself alone doesn't provide the umbrella that we need for the students in order for them to be safe. So whatever it is that the school police force and the superintendent come up with, it will be the best umbrella we can create. Does that make sense? Even something as simple as a pencil can hurt a person, so you can't ban pencils.
Yeah, you
Now,
can't kill 17 people in 5 minutes. with a pencil.
Exactly, and we want to create an umbrella of safety, clearly.
All right.
Mrs. Portis, too, a lot of the stuff, we can always talk, privately. You can reach out to us with your questions anytime. Myself, personally, I'm happy to talk to you offline and address more of your concerns. But I can tell you that, anytime there's a school shooting, I mean, our staff,
Every one of us.
everybody is reevaluating and meeting and reviewing policies and reviewing procedures and looking at the breakdowns in Florida. Our officers are educating themselves on what went wrong, and then they meet with administrators and Mr. Short, and they have monthly meetings, and they're constantly talking about what we can do. And when they bring those recommendations to the board, I guarantee you, the Gateway School Board is very favorable in anything we can do to protect our students. I mean, that's been a top priority here, as you can see, because, we went through quite a lot of hurdles to do what we've done already. And I also personally am looking forward to, hearing what might come down from the government as far as maybe some financial assistance that might help us to make some decisions that we can't do right now, that may open up some new opportunities and doors for us. So I think it's on all of our radar. My kids go to school here too, as do many people sitting at this table. And, we love our community, and our kids are our number one asset, and we want to do everything we can to keep them safe.
By the way, how's Alex?
I want to add a comment to John's. While it may be difficult, as John indicated, no one in the public should assume that because it's difficult that we don't have that capacity, or that we do have that capacity. Okay?
Okay, I just wondered for you're the safety committee? You are. If you were willing to have a parent subcommittee to be involved with some ideas, and I'd be happy to involve in.
Yeah, we could schedule a committee meeting where the public can come and, give their feedback on what kind of security measures they're interested in. Absolutely.
That'd be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, Alex won first place Sunday at the Sweet Sunday event for Best Child Baker. All right.
Anyone else at this time wish to address the school board on non-agenda items?
And we invite Alex to give the board, donuts or cupcakes, whatever leftovers. We'll take his leftovers.
I will remind him of that.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, it reminds people on top. Nice one, though. Administrative and board reports, we'll start with Ms. Baumgart.
Mr. Williams. I just want to take a moment and make sure that everyone's aware that our Gator Cafe Training Center is open at the high school. And I would like to thank all of the students and staff for all of their hard work in getting this up and running, as well as I'd like to take a moment and thank the parents and the local businesses that contributed either monetarily or material-wise to get that up and running. So if you have an opportunity, please stop and see that at the high school. And also, I wanted to make sure everyone's aware that our annual transition fair will be happening Wednesday, March 14th at the Gateway High School Library from 6 to 8. That is for our students 7th through 12th grade. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Chakey.
Nothing at this time.
Dr. Rossi.
Nothing further.
Dr. Schott.
Actually, just one item, just like to mention, we have the architect RFPs this evening in front of the board. Please take your copy. The Buildings and Grounds Committee will have a meeting and make a determination on the next steps in the process. Thank you.
Ms. Crump.
Nothing at this time.
Mr. Dice. I don't think so. Dr. Short.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Last night, we did hold a intergovernmental meeting to discuss the rezoning of the Gateway Middle School property. It was very entertaining, very informative. We were able to have a PowerPoint presentation. I see some laughter out there in the audience. The power.
It is very well said.
PowerPoint presentation, I believe is online. Micah is, I think, outside there, and he was going to download that and have that available for the public to see. That's all tonight, Mr. Williams.
Thank you. Board reports, we'll start with Mr. Ritter.
No, you were gonna start with me, ladies first, remember?
Okay. Usually we go second to last.
I asked you if I could go first tonight.
Go for it.
Well, he gave me a good lead-in
You're
because
making everybody mad.
my board, I do that all the time, I do that well. My board report is really on the meeting last night. I'm gonna read this because I had to really spend some time and put my thoughts together, so excuse my reading. I'd like to address a few concerns from last night's intergovernmental meeting held at Gateway Middle School, especially as it relates to what Councilman Harvey said. I want everyone to be very clear that the Monroeville Council's job is not to act as dictators or kings. They are not to say who can build what, when, or where, so long as they are conforming to the already established laws and zoning ordinances that Monroeville has already put in place. With that being said, School Board brought the idea of rezoning the Gateway Middle School property to the council after it was approved and recommended by Monroeville Council's own Planning Commission. Ron and company have stated that they will not approve because they are not sure who will buy the land. I find this troubling for several reasons, and I believe it is time I address them. First, we have seen this time and time again. Monroeville has gone against Planning Board's recommendations, against Zoning Board's recommendations, and against their own council's advice. This has ended with Monroeville being sued and often losing. For instance, there was a gentleman trying to open a banquet hall in Monroeville that council denied. They denied him despite the fact that everyone approved and recommended the development, after the gentleman had put a lot of his money into the development and architecture plans, and after he made changes to design based on the Planning Commission's recommendations. Council fought a temple expanding their building and lost. They fought logging and Turnpike Gardens and lost. They are currently fighting seismic testing and losing. So if anyone is inhibiting business growth in Monroeville, I believe it is the council's track record of fighting business development at every turn. How much is it costing taxpayers for council's attempt at control? The next reason this makes no sense is due to future residual income. The Gateway School District has sold several schools in the past. Only one actually became a commercial property subject to taxes. The building I speak of is where One Monroeville Center sits, across from the municipal building. This was once the spot of Monroeville Elementary School. One Monroeville Center provides a lot of tax revenue by being a commercial property. For instance, they pay large amounts of property tax. The tenants pay mercantile and business privilege tax. And lastly, all employees pay income taxes. Imagine how much money comes from the profit from for-profit businesses when the land is sold as commercial versus residential. This also increases the sale value by an estimated 20%, which would also bring in more revenue for both Gateway and Monroeville, as stated last night by the 360 Group. Yet Mr. Harvey said he can't vote to rezone the property based on not knowing what is going in there, costing the taxpayers of Monroeville potentially millions of dollars. Lastly, I am curious as to what council could think of that would move in there that would be bad for the community. I've heard a casino would be bad, and I would agree. But we are already protected from a casino. I contacted the gaming board, and there is zero chance for a casino to go into Monroeville. The Rivers would have had to win a bid on a mini casino license, but a stadium in Philadelphia won that bid, and Monroeville is within the 25-mile limits of the Rivers, so Monroeville is excluded. I've heard mention of an adult store or a strip club. I do not want that in my neighborhood either. I'm not sure what type of strip club would buy a 26-acre plot of land, so I don't think that's a reasonable concern. At least I hope it's not. Furthermore, this Monroeville Council voted and approved a medical marijuana dispensary to be built in the heart of Monroeville recently. They actually approved the building of a facility whose main purpose is to sell marijuana, which is still Schedule I illegal drug by federal law. Now, I don't bring that up to have a debate on the legalization of marijuana. I bring it up to shed light on how nonsensical the stance is that they will not rezone the property that would do nothing but benefit the community when they have already shown that there's not much of a line that they won't cross. Why have a planning board if they don't listen to it? Why have ordinances if they just want to have the last say in everything? I implore council to look at the big picture and do what is best for both Gateway and Monroeville. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mary Beth. Mr. Ritter.
I attended that meeting last night as well, and I'm on the Intergovernmental Committee, and I am really, really confused as to how we can resolve this. I think I understand both sides, and so I'm trying to put myself in a position to help move it forward, and I can't see a way for me to magically know the future. If I could, then I could tell them who will buy the property and what the price will be. But if it gets rezoned C2, the potential uses under C2 are an amusement use, auditorium, bank, a business college, business service, a club, convention center, department store, food service, funeral home, medical clinic, nursery, office, personnel services, restaurant bar, retail stores, shopping center, studio, theater, vehicle sales room, veterinary clinic, and accessory uses. Then there are many conditional uses as well. A church, communication tower, communication antenna, commercial commuter lot, drive-in restaurant, drive-in theater, gas station, heliport, hotel, major excavation, major timbering and logging operation, public use or utility station, vehicle sales area, or vehicle services. Now, I don't know which one of those folks would like to buy the property. And if council is waiting for me or us to tell them who is going to buy it, we're going to wait a long time. If we wait a long time, if we just put this on the shelf for 5 or 10 or 20 years, 5, 10, or 20 years from now, whoever's on council will still not be able to know the future. If that's true, then it behooves this council and this school board to find a way to not argue in the realm of the impossible and the emotional, rather argue in the realm of what's rational. So it seems to me that it's rational for us to move forward and open the door for all of our options, get it rezoned C2, and with the options before us, then see what happens. Doesn't that seem rational? Is there a better way to? I couldn't hear from the audience last night a better way to move forward. I only heard confusion and frustration. But it's on both sides now, and I recommend we stop being confused and frustrated, and we pick a path and move forward. I think the best path forward is to give the school board the flexibility to do the level best that it can, whether it's us sitting here or some future board. Doesn't matter to me. Whichever board it is needs to do their level best on behalf of the people of Monroeville and the students. I think this is the best way to do that. So tell me how I'm wrong. That's my report.
Thank you. Mr. O'Donnell.
You know, I couldn't agree more with Mary Beth or John and John's comments. Mr. Harvey's performance was extremely disappointing last night. But let me try to add a little meat to the bone because Mary Beth raises a particularly important point. The county has the property assessed at $16,500,000 and some change. Applying our current millage rate, that generates over $300,000 for Gateway School District. Over a 10-year period, it accrues to more than $3 million plus for Gateway School District. There's also $160,000, assuming it transfers or sells at 16 million, $160,000 transfers tax or stamp that is allocated between the municipality and the school district. There's also a mercantile tax that's estimated to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $40,000 or $50,000 per year that taxpayers would not receive if we're not able to move forward with this initiative. And these kinds of impediments really beg understanding. This board has been diligent, has worked more than a year on the initiative that we're talking about now. we have kept the taxpayer and the students in the forefront. Unlike other decisions, well, I shouldn't say unlike other, but the other decisions didn't result in taxable entities except for one. Now, the borough also gets 4 mills per, so that's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 or 50,000. How much?
$65,000.
$65,000, $650,000 over 10 years, assuming there's no millage increase on the part of the board or the municipality. It really seems, it's difficult for me to understand why a councilman or councilwomen won't move forward and assist the school board to rezone this property so that we can derive the 20% additional benefit that Mary Beth spoke to. Now, finally, what also wasn't discussed at that meeting was that no matter who purchases the property, and regardless of the use, it has to go before the municipality. So they're going to have the final decision as to whether or not they want to permit the intended use to go forward. And so the kinds of things that were raised last night were just simply baffling. We're trying to save taxpayer money. We're trying to advance the initiatives that need to be advanced. We're talking about 60 and 65-year-old facilities. We haven't raised taxes in, what, 2-3 years? I think this board, and quite honestly, past boards, have been particularly attentive to the issue of taxpayer dollars. Now, they're walking away from, and quite honestly, what could amount to millions of dollars. And all we're asking for is a rezoning effort.
The rezoning that's been approved by their rezoning board.
A rezoning that was approved by their planning commission, that's correct. So I too was at that meeting, disappointed. Mary Beth makes excellent points, John makes excellent points. I think the public should know and maybe pick up the phone and call their council person and let them know they don't want to lose this revenue for the district. One other thing that I wanted to raise. Mary Beth mentioned briefly, and maybe this should be put into a study session, that about the collecting money at the gate for instruments, etc. One of the things that was brought to my attention was that there was some effort to raise money, etc., for band instruments. I thought we allocated in our budget sufficient funds for those matters to be addressed, and if there's money left, they ought to look at it. If there's not enough money, we ought to address it in the upcoming budget, and that's all.
Well, I'll talk offline with you about that.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. O'Donnell. You done?
I am. Was that a sincere thank you?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Mr.
You
McIntyre.
can't even tell anymore.
I'll keep it brief, just to touch on, I think, what Mr. O'Donnell kind of closed with there. I think it would be very beneficial for members of the community that weren't at the meeting last night to reach out to their council members, reach out to your board members, questions, concerns, whether you support the rezoning. We want to hear voices. I think we heard a total of maybe 6 people, actually, 6 that followed the rules and got up to the mic and spoke last night. And it appears to me, and maybe I'm wrong, but that Mr. Harvey's holding this entire process hostage based on the view of those 6 to 10 people. And I don't get it either. And Mr. Ritter, you spoke on trying to find a rational solution. I'm with you. I've been racking my brain to find that. Sometimes there's just no there. But my understanding going into that meeting last night was after our meeting when Mr. Kalkstein, who else was there? Val, Dr. Shorten, and you. Yeah, Mr. Ritter was there. My impression was his concern was he wanted to have voices heard before he could vote with confidence on the rezoning. And we, knowing that meeting was going to turn into what it turned into, we obliged. And we told him that any deal that we possibly got coming down the road, which we are obligated to do because it has to go through planning commission, that it would come to them and that they would have a say in the matter before the sale was finalized. So that they would know who was going in there before they before we, did some weird backroom deal, which we're literally incapable of doing, they would be informed the entire way. I walked away from that meeting, and I believe Dr. Short felt the same way, and Dr. Coxney felt the same way, that if we had the public meeting, we opened it up to everybody to have their questions, we answered as best we could, and we promised to walk any deal into council, that he would have no problem voting yes for the rezoning. And I think within 3 minutes of public comment last night, it was pretty obvious that that was never the case. So I'm a little bit embarrassed. I feel like we kind of got used a little bit last night. And I was really, really confused by how the whole thing proceeded. So at this point, I think we need to get together and discuss what our planning is for moving forward with the rezoning. But I don't know. I mean, I'm just flabbergasted.
May I make an offer? There's a website that's run by a couple of folks called Monroeville Community Cares. It's called a Facebook page, and you can go onto that page, and you can offer your comments in a respectful way. And then other people can answer those comments, and people can actually think it through in a public way on that website. So I would encourage some folks who don't feel comfortable calling up their school board member or calling up their councilman. That's a softer way to do it, but that is one way. Plus, Dr. Short, isn't it true that the meeting was recorded by the Gateway School District last night?
That is correct.
And what's going to happen with the video recording of that?
It will be placed on the district website, and it will loop. Micah, are you out there?
That's a first.
My understanding was that at
No,
some point tonight, it's going to be.
Why wasn't it broadcast live?
There's no live capabilities at the junior high school.
Dr. Short, why wasn't it broadcast live?
The capabilities to do that.
Right.
Did not exist.
Now, don't we have the capabilities to broadcast live in this room?
Correct.
Sure, but we don't have enough seats for the audience. That's why we moved it to the Gateway Middle School, in order to get as much feedback from the community as we could. And we deliberately recorded it so that we could show what went on, what the features of the meeting were, so people could judge one way or another, thumbs up or thumbs down, as to how we could best move forward.
And typically with meetings like that, the people that do show up, they're not showing up with, massive amounts of support for something. You're getting the people that are against it in general, so I don't think you're getting a good flavor of what the community thinks on the matter. So I think it's why it's important for everybody that is, concerned with this issue to speak and
Find
come
a way,
forward,
yeah.
so we get a better idea of, how this is playing out in the public eye.
Thank you.
And, thank you, John. And outside of that, I mentioned earlier about, with the withdrawal of my RFP, and I'm going to be looking to the rest of my board to, at some point, we need to come up with, I believe, maybe 2 policies, one of which I think is very important, that when we're dealing with hiring a company's, professional services, we're not required to go out to bid. And I certainly don't think we need to open the gate on doing an RFP or a bidding process on every one that we look at, because some of that would become overwhelmingly tedious. But I think maybe we can get together and come up with a dollar amount where it's a threshold, or anything above this dollar amount. I think it's fiscally responsible for us to look at multiple bids, look at multiple proposals before we take action. So I'd be looking for some kind of collaborative effort on and thoughts on what the wording would be for that. And that would be it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Mr. Gottman.
Yeah, I'll try to be even quicker than that.
Ouch. Your time's up.
Thanks. Just a real quick feedback when he said, Monroeville is not just solely councils. It's not ours for the school board. It's everyone lives in Monroeville. So if you want change or you want to keep something the same, just speak up, get with your councilman, get with the school board, be involved. I mean, this is everyone's community. Everyone should have a hand in it. With that said, I believe the girls are playing tonight at the Baldwin, so I want to wish our Lady Gators the best of luck and hope they can continue keeping this thing rolling. And the last thing, to again keep up with a long-standing tradition, recognize the artwork behind me. Our selection this time is from Mrs. Wentrobel's second grade class for a tribute to the Warhol flowers from Evergreen Elementary. They are very colorful and
They are beautiful.
Yes, they're very beautiful.
And did the groundhog see its shadow?
Yes, our groundhog did see the shadow. So I guess, was that spring right around the corner?
No, it's-
6 more weeks of
6
winter.
more weeks of winter. Hey, with weather we got right now, I'll take it.
Seems like spring's here.
That is all I have.
Yeah, real quick, I just want to wish the Lady Gators best of luck tonight, basketball team, as well as the Gateway swimming contingent, which is Whipple Championships tomorrow and Friday. So best of luck to them. That's awesome with everybody participating. Lastly, came to my attention recently, the Gateway employee recently decided to retire. Custodian Ron Myers has been an employee of Gateway for almost 41 years. So I want to wish him the best of luck and happiness in his retirement, and thank him for his many years of dedication. That's it.
Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you. Lady Gators are down 24-21 at halftime.
Ooh, close game.
Just got that at 8:37, so that's a fresh update. Just piggybacking on the meeting last night, I think it was representative of people of that ward, what they wish to do. I don't think it's all of Monroeville, what they wish, and I look forward to. I think more information needs to go out to the public, exactly what's going on and how we're going about it. There's a lot of rumors and misinformation, and looking for a way to get that out there. I think last night enlightened us a little bit on something that we need to do, not only as a board, but as an administration also. And also, for the Buildings and Grounds Committee, hopefully you guys can go through these manuals quickly and come back to the board with a recommendation for us, because as we move forward here to try to get that property rezoned over there, and I think a big mistake is that we could sell that land to Company A. Company A could come in and rip down the school and sell that land to somebody else. And, it could be anyone. So I don't understand also, as my colleague said, we were told that we were putting a cart before the horse in some aspect, but I've told them that there's a lot of contingencies. It could be 2 or 3 years until that property could be sold or turned over. There's so many other aspects to it. Basically, what we're trying to do is see how much we could get for that property and to see if we would get enough that it would be enough to enable us to build a new school.
And not to interrupt, but quite frankly, it's our cart and our horse, not council's. It's our decision. And I don't think that it's in their duties to tell us how to make these decisions. So just want to interject that.
No, that's fine. And I think it's in the best interest of both the school district and the municipality. We want our best bang for our buck. We want to put something in there that's best interest of Monroeville, and we all want to get taxes out of it. So I think we're all on the same page. We just got to figure out how we can meet, like Rick said, somewhere in between here and work together as a team and get this done. And at that time, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Before we do that, I forgot to add one thing. I'm sorry, but somebody will be really mad if I don't say it. There's a very nice young lady turning 39 again tonight. So, Mrs. J, happy birthday. Thank you.
Happy birthday, Mrs. J.
So
Motion,
moved.
seconded.
Motion moved by Mr. McIntyre, second by Ms. Rucci. All